those apples don't come with labels, right? They don't have a supermarket label on them. So people are like, can I eat this? Is this good for me? But they totally are. You can eat them. And so we go harvest them from the urban wild. So they're there available for free if you guys ever want to harvest. And then we made cider.
When we talk about building resilience inclusively, we really mean not just so people like me, middle-aged white men with a college background and middle-class background, can do fine when a hurricane hits or a heat wave, but how can we really make sure we're caring for everyone, including those who are not as privileged as some of us in the room, including myself? I think we can come together to build resilience. I think we can prepare for disruptions before they happen. We don't have to wait for the weather forecast that says the hurricane's coming down or a heat wave's going to be upon us. We can be preparing on an ongoing, regular basis, and that's a really important thing to do. We can prevent broad disruptions from diseases that ride in on the blood of new species of mosquitoes or ticks or other kinds of vectors of diseases. So what does it take? One part of building resilience is for neighbors to join together in an ongoing way. And I ask all of you, are you already engaged with neighbors in your community? Here's a question. How many of you have your next door neighbors' phone numbers already programmed into your phones? Neighbors on both sides of you. Okay, so there's a step some of us can take, is get to know our neighbors well enough that if there is something going on, we can readily call and check in. How are you doing? Do you need anything? So if we just do that one small step, that's a step to building community. Another step, so building community is important. Another step is to learn what are the risks we're facing. And in Boston, we have tremendous amounts of information. Many of you have heard of Climate Ready Boston, the report all about the general things, sea level rise and inundation and where it's going to have impacts. And neighborhood by neighborhood, there are more refined and detailed reports coming out. One just came out last week or so, the Climate Ready South Boston report. So we have lots of information available. Not everybody is making use of it yet. And I think one of the ways we can help each other is to, when we have that information, those of us who have it, help bring it into the conversations where it can really be useful as people are making decisions. So building community is really important. Accessing and using the information that we have available is important. And the leaders that I'm about to introduce, they are working to engage people, particularly in East Boston. And as you listen to them, I hope that you will really listen for something new that you can do, whether or not you're in East Boston. But think about, are there similar groups in your neighborhood that you could join, that you could support, that you could encourage other people to participate in? Is there something new you can find that you can help to do to continue building resilience in your local community and in the Boston and greater Boston community? Kannan Thiruvengadam, close, who started Eastie Farm. He works to improve food access by facilitating interactive spaces where people can come together, young and old, and participate in growing food and growing community. I've been so pleased and impressed with everybody that's here. Kannan is everywhere in East Boston. He goes to community events all the time. I find him to be an incredibly smart man, and I'm really glad to introduce him. Kannan.
Thank you, John. So, can you all see the logo of Eastie Farm behind me? I've never seen it that big. As John said, my name is Kannan, and the last name is Thiruvengadam. You did get it right. So this logo, it's homemade. So everything that is done for this nonprofit organization, done by the people of East Boston who decided to come together and work on it. So this one has a carrot because we like carrots more than sticks, but also because what you see there is what's called a missing tooth in urban parlance. If a building is missing where one should be, it's called a missing tooth. But the statement we're trying to make here with this logo is it doesn't have to be a building. It could be some green space. It could be open space. People need breathing room. And you could produce food and you could build community with that space. East Boston particularly is lacking when it comes to open space. Compared to other neighborhoods in the city, it does have less. So we really could use more. And Eastie Farm is one such open space. It's a little space with a big idea is what I'd like to say. And you'll hear more about the story soon of Eastie Farm. It started like this, with this empty lot that's owned by the city of Boston. And do you see that ticket on the right top? Right there. So that is issued by the city. I know some city folks are in here. So issued by the city to the city. There are many departments in the city. So if one is negligent, there's another one to do something about that. So our ask of the city was, can we take care of the space? Maybe we could do something better with it. They were a little skeptical at first, but then they said, all right, you could have it until the end of the year. This was 2015. And that was summer. By the time we actually got the permit, it was close to fall. So there wasn't much we could do in terms of growing stuff. So we thought about what we could do. I'm going to tell you what we did end up doing, but we had to test the soil first. And the soil, you can see at the bottom of the readings there, you can see that the lead count is there. So it's way, way above safety limit. So that's the soil. The UMass soil test lab, if you ever want to test soil, they're pretty good. And we found out that this is not safe, so you can't possibly grow stuff that you want to eat right in that soil. So lead, it's not like we just found out lead is poisonous. Even back in 1900, people knew that if kids ate pieces of paint with lead, they had problems, serious problems. But it took us a long time, like until the 70s, Nixon's EPA did the first thing about it, and then in 1990, it was gasoline was regulated, so it wouldn't have as much lead. And we're still kind of working on it, and as we all know, it continues to be a problem. So if such a well-known problem took us a century to act on, what are we going to do with carbon, which is even worse, excess carbon in the atmosphere, something for us to think about. So what we did, we had to do a ton of cleanup. Clean. That went on for a couple of weeks. And then we also brought in new soil because we had to grow stuff in clean soil. And just fast forwarding a little bit here just to show what we now have, but we decided even back then in a small way that we need to start making our own soil. So we started encouraging neighbors to bring food scraps so we could compost them. So that's what you see in the middle here. Youth Conservation Corps folks are working on creating compost. And when neighbors wanted to help by bringing their food scraps, they didn't have anything to bring it in. So we got these buckets that you see in the left bottom. Those are soy sauce buckets from banh mi, which they were throwing away. We got them and we gave them to some of our neighbors, and they were able to bring those food scraps in. And on the left top here, you see a bag of sawdust or wood shavings from a wood shop in the shipyard called grain. And those provide the carbon you need for composting. For composting, the correct ratio of carbon to nitrogen is 25:1. When you have that, the microbes do their job well. So that's the optimal mix. You need that carbon. And we got that from them because they have to pay for it to be taken away, whereas we didn't charge them anything. So they dropped it off. So that's how the composting started. And on the right top, you see the kid that lived next door, Jason and myself, trying to do some sheet mulching so we can do some topsoil development that's clean. So that's how you do sheet mulching. If you don't know, you have to dance. So the next big thing after soil is water, and the lot did not have city water connection, so we had to improvise, and we noticed that the downspout from one of our neighbors had fallen down in a storm. We helped him put it up, and we also took the water, the rainwater. The neighbor on the other side saw that, and he said, take mine too. Because they were suffering two problems from these. One, chronic water damage of the foundation, of the basement. Two, when there is too much rain, they had flooding. Because when we pave over everything, water has nowhere to go, then you got flooding. So they were suffering both of these problems, and they were really happy to take the water out of their space and give it to us. And we turned it into something good, because we could grow vegetables with that. And the neighbors do feel free to come over and take some greens and vegetables at times, which the garden, by the way, is open to everybody all the time. It's that sort of a paradigm. So I call it extreme flood to extreme food, because when we think about climate change, we're also thinking about one of the consequences, which is extreme precipitation. And you have to deal with that. And one way you can deal with that is turn it into a good thing, right? And that's resiliency. So it's not like if we sent more water to the ocean's going to be thankful. It seems to be quite happy expanding on its own. This is flooding along our waterfront that we got in January. And I think there was another slide supposed to here, but that's okay. So back to what we did with the space. Within that few months time frame, August to October, we turned the front of it to look like this. And inside it was like this. And I saw people going in there, sitting down, having meetings. I've seen some Zoomix folks there. And maybe there were others too. And because they had given us only a very, very short, the city had given us a short-term permit, we planted garlic. And if you know how garlic works, you plant it before the first frost, and you harvest it the next summer, end of summer. So then we were able to go back to the city and say, we put garlic in the ground. You got to give us continuation of the permit. And they said, and they gave us it. So it worked. So the garlic festival became a tradition. We still do that. And this is our state rep joining us to get his share of garlic. I'm also showing this because when you do things at a community scale, you actually meet the people with power and talk to them and ask them questions. Anything larger is just a little harder. It's not every day that you run into Charlie Baker or somebody else in Washington, right? But local, yes, you can. You can see them, you can talk to them, and that's very, very helpful. That's why community scale seems to be so optimal and effective. So coming all the way to 2018, this picture is from this summer. I know, John, you were there taking pictures of the corn back there. That corn is Salvadoran corn. It grew to about 12 feet tall, maybe even taller with some of them, and beautiful, beautiful corn that we just harvested. And apparently our photographer has also improved since 2015. It looks a lot better. Thanks, Rudy. And more pictures of food being harvested. The food goes to 3 primary locations: the soup kitchen, there's a family shelter, and there's a food pantry. And the soup kitchen, folks, this is people without a lot of means. And the reason we want to bring this to them is because when you don't have a lot of means, the last thing you can afford is fresh organic food. And that is what we grow, so we bring it there. And just being in this food space also exposed us to a lot of sources of food. So these cardboard boxes here contain tomato sauce that was made by Stockpot Malden from their own local farm, but they just had too much. And by connecting to the service called Spoiler Alert, we found out about this, and we brought that, and Soup Kitchen used that really well. This is Lydia Edwards, who's now our city councilor, but she's there hanging out in the Soup Kitchen helping. She's one of the founders. And the previous picture, you see another founder, that's Sandra. And I said it's about building growing food, but also building community. And here, as a community, we're growing a tree, and this is an Asian pear. And whenever I see these trees, I remember the people that participated in planting it. And we talk about how this tree, when it grows up and it bears fruit, somebody in the future is going to benefit from that. And the same way, if you go back, you look at the apple trees that are in East Boston's urban wild, right? And those are not harvested because those apples don't come with labels, right? They don't have a supermarket label on them. So people are like, can I eat this? Is this good for me? But they totally are. You can eat them. And so we go harvest them from the urban wild. So they're there available for free if you guys ever want to harvest. And then we made cider, a real taste of Eastie. And these kids get so excited about making cider because you could crank that machine. The machine itself came from agriculture all in JP, and that itself is about 100 years old. So we're making connection here, not just across space, but across time too, about people who planted those apple trees way long when, and whoever made this tree way back when, made this machine, and now we're able to benefit from all that. And we should be doing something similar for people who are in the future. More people eating apples and posing for pictures. This is a platform we decided to put up because somebody said, oh, you guys need a shed. Oh, yes, we need a shed. So then we looked it up and said, oh, you need a platform so the shed can sit on some flat surface. We're like, okay, we'll build one. And this Billy here said, he's an ex-Marine. He said, ask me to do it and I'll do it. I said, do it, and he did it. So we have a platform. But after we created the platform for the shed, people showed up and started playing music. So we said, well, the people gets what the people wants. And so the shed is off to a corner and not complaining. Although there's a gardener who comes by and she's somewhat OCD. I think she's upset that the shed is a little lopsided. And she said, the doors are going to come off. It's like that. And they did come off. And she was right. So this is Cities of Service. Some of you may know this organization. They fund cities. And Love Your Block is a City of Boston program that you may know about. They fund that program. The idea behind that is they will give you money for supplies, but you have to find volunteers. So to bring people together, to do work together, to beautify your neighborhood. That's the idea. So they helped us buy some rain barrels and things like that, more mulch, more soil. That was all very helpful. A lot of people showed up to do this kind of work. This is a second space that Magdalena and Chris were involved in helping us take over. And this is BPS, Boston Public School owned space right across the street from the Umana School. And this one, the people involved here are from Meridian House, which is a recovery home. And it's a very regimented process. They really appreciate being able to be outside and do things. So it's their garden therapy. And on the right side, you see kids from Soccer Without Borders, and they also had a lot of fun there. What you can't see there, but they are they're fertilizing the soil with llama poop. Yeah. So one of our neighbors is connected to a farm in upstate New York, so she brings a lot of that. So more kids doing work, and this is a video. Let's see.
Espere, ella va a ayudar, Sale un poquito. Mueva.
Mueve, Zaira, muévelo. Muévelo. Muévelo duro, Zaira.
¡Vamos, Zaira! Oh my God, una zanahoria. Oh, yo me saco una zanahoria. ¿Cuándo?
She wasn't expecting a carrot to be attached to a plant and to come out of the ground. So that's the sort of learning that happens when you connect with land and bring kids into the space. This is another kid. Look at, she's just so, the way she looks at this radish leaves is so loving. Yeah, loving, yes. And there's more action with kids. This is when we brought some solar panels out so they could, we were talking about hydroponics, but really they were trying out how the panels work in series, in parallel. When you block the sun, does it still work? That sort of thing. On the right side, you see Excel school students, and on the left side, neighborhood kids. This is worms. That's something that excites kids. You got to involve people with whatever excites them, right? And for kids, it's worms. And these two worms have names. Is Heather here? She knows the names. There you go. Yeah, Michael and Paula. Yeah, very good, Heather. So the kids can somehow recognize them. Don't ask me how. More kids doing work. some child labor here. So the space also gets used by one of my neighbors. She does something called StoryCorps to identify folks that are of interest to her, and then have other neighbors sit around in an intimate space and talk about their life. Because a lot of our neighbors, we know them in some capacity, but we don't know their early life or where they come from. So that sort of thing. It was really nice to do that here. Then it's about fun. This is about climate resiliency. It's about climate resiliency, but it's also about fun. And if you didn't have that fun component, who wants to get involved, right? There's a lot of fun that happens here. So music, dancing, lots of drumming, painting, and that's our eggplant throwing contest. Who says you can't play with food? It's music, more music, people having fun, big drum circle. And our fun community is not restricted to people. So, because we need these, we need the pollinators, we need the insects to do everything they do, and we also, even if we don't need them, they have the right to exist. And given that we have pretty much demolished a lot of the wildlife in the world currently, what was the study? In the past 40, 50 years, we've removed about 50% of the wildlife in the world, and we may be in the middle of some sort of a large extinction. Given that, we have to create spaces where these things can thrive. So we're really happy to see all this wildlife here. And these are aphids, but then the ladybugs eat them. So there's a whole ecosystem. It manages itself quite well, and we're happy to share it with our non-human community, whatever our produce is. So more of those. This is not an animal, but water is life. So it's a good picture too. Let's see. I'll go quickly to, I do like that one. Yeah. So this is a space in the back where if you go there, you'll, on the hottest day of the year, which we're starting to have more and more of, it's about 10 to 15 degrees cooler. It's under a mulberry tree. It's behind all the buildings. And most of urban heat island effect is because of developed environment. Here you have exposed soil, you have plants, and you have trees. And because of that, they don't emit heat the way concrete pavement does. So it's pretty cool. And it's nice to be in that space. You can look at flowers and bees and stuff. So this is one of our neighbors. He donated that piece of wood when we were setting up the space, and it says, "The earth is all we have in common." It's a Wendellberry quote. And I believe it is something that's too beautiful for us to give up on. And we have to fight to keep it, and we can. Thank you.
I want to bring up Magdalena Ayed, who founded Harborkeepers in 2017, I believe, 2016, to build community coastal resilience. She works to support education and engagement and advocacy, and Magdalena and Kannan and Alex all work closely together and with many other people in East Boston. Magdalena, one of the things she does that I appreciate, and you don't do it alone, but you, in addition to coordinating activities that bring people out to explore and care for the coastline and learn about the coastline, you've also built a community that has an online component that reaches beyond and informs people when there is a threatening weather event coming. You make sure that gets shared. You also share interesting stories just about what happens on the ocean, the amazing work that happens on the ocean and so forth. So I don't want to tell your whole story, but I admire your work. I'm glad to know about it, and please share it with us.
Sure. Thank you very much. How's everyone tonight? So I'm really happy to be here. This is an honor, and I think it's a very special night, especially sort of all of us together, being here together, and also, being together in the community, doing this work together. And I am again inspired by Kannan each and every time. So thank you for your presentation. I learned a lot as well. So I don't have as much of a. Do I have to click on my link here? No.
Click on your name.
Yeah. Okay. So as John was saying, the organization was founded in 2016, the Harborkeepers. it really was born out of a need and an urgency, but also through passion, through a love of the water. As Kannan was saying, water is life. And here we have this beautiful neighborhood of East Boston with its challenges and with its impacts, and with its diversity, with its geography. I mean, it's a really special place. And so I found myself, living there. 13 years ago I moved when I got married and started raising a family. My background is in international politics, and I couldn't really travel much when I was raising a family. So I started to get engaged in my neighborhood. Even though I had studied global issues, I was at the micro level at that point, raising 2 children and seeing the impacts of the environmental issues, being surrounded by the water, and also loving this beautiful place that I found myself in. I wasn't really planning to move to Boston. But also seeing how the community was suffering certain impacts that were basically water-based, waterfront-based. So I worked in different spheres. I did tenant organizing. I did work in different environmental organizations, actually as a volunteer, and I started to connect really closely with different groups, organizations, and what I saw was a need to build a whole platform to do this work. My pictures don't really match up like Kannan's, and I apologize for that. So there was a real need to address these issues that, obviously, the biggest one that we all know about very well is climate change. But before that, the community itself really has a lot of struggles, like many communities. And so I saw that there was a disconnect between talking about climate change, a narrative of climate change resiliency, and what the community was experiencing. So, the idea, much like Kannan and the founders of Eastie Farm, I consulted with folks that I value very much in the community and outside the community, and it's a big endeavor, right, to found an organization. But there was no way backwards. It was vision, and it was a beautiful vision. And here we are in 2018, a couple of years later, thanks to supporters and partners and funders, and we're on our way. We definitely need more capacity. But so the mission of the organization is to build coastal community resiliency and to foster environmental stewardship. And I don't know about you guys, but it's not easy to foster environmental stewardship. It's really a hard task, especially in communities that are so vulnerable and that are at risk. So that's the big challenge, but we really took it on, and it's working. I can say that the work that we're doing is very impactful, I think, because people see the passion of the leadership and also see, it's fun, like Kannan was saying. I think it's some of it is doom and gloom. I mean, the reality is that we're in this conundrum as a city, right, with climate issues and climate impacts. But if you make it the community engagement meaningful, intentional, and fun, people join the effort, and it becomes even more fun when you have more people working together. So here's a picture of Heather, who's, I don't know where, there you are, Heather. One of the ways that we foster stewardship is by getting people out in the waterfront, just spending time doing different kinds of activities, learning about the coastal environment. And believe it or not, even though we're this island, there really wasn't much opportunity to do that, I have to say, except for Piers Park Sailing. Of course, they've been around for 20 years. There wasn't much opportunity to really learn about the different types of shorelines, what is happening on the waterfront, from development to, European green crabs and everything in between. We were missing that opportunity. So this organization really, the mission is very hyper-local, but it's very targeted, coastal communities, resiliency, and environmental stewardship. But how you do that, I think, is really key. So, for example, in fact, we have this great partnership, Piers Park Sailing and Eastie Farm, not just with the Castle program, which I just think that it's a beautiful thing that we have all these connections and all these partnerships and collaborations. But we have this program in the McKay Elementary School, where we bring climate topics in a very hands-on way. And last year was the 2nd, 4th, and 6th graders. This year it's the 2nd, 4th, and 5th. And this wonderful school, which, by the way, I want to congratulate the McKay Elementary. They just won a $100,000. I don't know if you guys heard. Yeah, really, that's amazing. The principal has been doing a great job, and he's really leveraging the school and really making sure that the children, that a lot of them are very vulnerable, are really having the opportunity for great education. But he opened up his arm and says, you know what, I love what you guys are doing. Come and do some lessons with the school. And so what that allowed us to do is really do some hands-on activities with the schools. And you can see the picture here. We brought people from NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association. And it's just bringing guests and bringing different experts into the classroom to teach them about the coastal environment. So how many children in East Boston knew about right whales? How many children in East Boston know about entanglement? But we're able to do that because we have this beautiful partnership, and we have the access, and we have trust in the community. And that picture on the right is also children who actually live on the waterfront but had never seen green crabs, and so we go picking for green crabs, and they get so excited about them. And some of the basis of the method and the model that we've developed is really partnership through partnerships, because as John was saying, we're all in this together, and we're not going to become more resilient if we do things in silos. And we all know that in many cities things are done in silos, but the opportunity before we get hit with the big storm, right, is that we're lucky, right? We're lucky we haven't gotten hit with this huge storm like Sandy and Nola and Houston. And you look at these images on TV and you're like, oh my God, when is it happening, right? But it's almost like we're lucky. We need to buy this time, and we really need to move forward on these issues and be proactive. So I mean, we talk a lot about this with Kannan and a lot of folks in East Boston is we support the city and we have great partnerships with the city departments, but we also don't want to wait. So what we're doing is we're just taking action through whether it's Eastie Farmer, Piers Sailing, or the Harborkeepers. We're just getting people out on the water. We're teaching marine education, coastal education. In this case, this was a meeting with some architecture project, and we brought them to the community to talk with folks in the community to talk about design, climate resilient design. And our activities are very diversified. On the right, we do a lot of community preparedness workshops. We train people through a partnership with, Nancy's over here, the Boston Public Health Commission and the Boston EMS. The resources are there. And so I think that we're just really savvy in bringing people together and networking and bringing the resources to our community to advance this resilience narrative. So here's some additional pictures. So on the right, top right, you could see we started a campaign, the microplastics campaign. And yes, I personally sifted through trash hours and hours to collect microplastics, because this is something that really is not talked about at all. I mean, we have a neighborhood of 50,000 people, 45,000. Nobody's talking about microplastics. But we are, because we're finding it on our shoreline. And the children are like sponges, right? You teach them these issues, and they will go home and they will think about this. So it's really a great opportunity to be able to, bring campaigns like the microplastics, and we can work with our partner institutions to even, improve the engagement and to bring technical expertise and so forth. Am I going backwards here? Okay, sorry. So the three main ways that we do our work and we, based on our mission, is really engagement. So a very meaningful engagement with the community, and it's continuous. So we're always in the community basically all the time. Like John would say, Kannan is everywhere at every event. So is Alex, so am I, so is Heather. There's a number of us. And so because we live, work, and play in this community, we have an advantage. So when we built this organization, we knew that it had to be led by the same people who live in this community. That gives us an advantage because we walk out of our homes, we see the water, we talk to the same people, we see different people, and we're able to message it in the way that it resonates with people's lives, because it also resonates with our own lives. So having presence in the community in different spheres and different places and spaces, but we particularly love doing education in schools, and here is we do a lot of tabling, we do a lot of events, programming in different areas. Here we're at the Curtis Giles School, another elementary school, where we're teaching about the ocean, whether we bring a sandbox or we bring in another hands-on activity, microplastics or whatever. At the top right, we were at Discover Moakley. Some of you might know about this event that the city planned with Boston Harbor Now about Moakley Park. So we do try to also have presence a little bit outside of the community. There's Heather. And we came up with an activity to talk about permeable surfaces, which we thought was kind of unique, but it wasn't easy to do. But we're always sort of honing our work. And there's a community preparedness workshop where Nancy was there as well. Also going to other communities. There's Charlestown on the right-hand side. And obviously, the kayaking is a partnership that we have with Piers Park Sailing. Activating the waterfront is really key to our work. Again, because we are this coastal community, we're this island, and many, many people just haven't had the chance to really spend time on the water. We know that the Boston Harbor has been accessible to some, but not all. So we want to change that narrative. We really want to, we're coastal. We're a coastal community, but in some ways we're not really allowed to be coastal. And so we're changing that by making it accessible to everybody, and in different ways. So we have this partnership with Piers Park Sailing where we do some kayaking sessions, and we've served hundreds of people, and we're going to continue to do that and expand that work. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. So there we are, sailing. Of course, we can't get enough sailing. And the funny thing is, we all support our organizations and love what we all do, and I think that's, again, it's the beauty of it. We also try to, so education, engagement, and then stewardship. And relationship building is really at the core of our work, because the relationship building is not just with community, but it's really with all of the stakeholders that have something to do with the environment or the Boston Harbor. And we're very intentional with the way we build relationships, because it's all about trust. People don't trust you, they won't support your cause, and they won't join in. And so you could see the story that Kannan was saying about Eastie Farm, how important it was for trust building. So people support Eastie Farm because they know who's behind it, they know what the activity is, and they get something really positive out of it. So, whether it's bringing local community leaders on a tour of the new huge, luxury waterfront development that has all these elements of climate resiliency, that can be accessible to us. It doesn't just have to be, a tour that's, you have to pay $40 for people from outside. That's really accessible. It's about community, it's about relationships. So because we work really hard on those relationships, people trust us, and then they're willing to open their arms and say, yeah, sure, come in and do some teaching, and, come join this tour. We'll show you what we're doing, just put the hard hat on, and that was a really fun tour, actually. We learned a lot about climate resilience, and we don't really have that background. Sorry. So anyway, the picture on the top right was our big Marine Science and Maritime Festival. That was the first huge event that we had. Was that? Oh, I don't know. I'm looking over here. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so the Marine... Oh, okay, I understand how this works now. Okay, sorry, I'm a little late. So the Marine Science and Maritime Festival was a big first, big event. And it was held in July of this past summer, and the goal of the event was to gather people in a waterfront space to learn about the marine environment, to have fun, to interact, and to walk away from this event saying, wow, okay, now I know what Harborkeepers is, and I learned something, and I want to come back, and I want to do this again, and I want to engage with this organization, this group of people. So according to Heather's estimates, I think they're a little bit on the high side. She says that there must have been about 700 people. I hope it's that many, but for a first-time event and a grassroots organization, I think that's pretty cool. We brought together about 26 organizations because what we want to do is highlight their work. It's not about us. It's about all these amazing organizations like the Aquarium who are doing this great work. We want to connect people and groups and organizations, and so it was phenomenal. It was just hands-on activities at every table. The agencies were just really happy to be there. We had the big MWRA water truck. Not one plastic bottle was used in that event. So we're setting a new trend, and we're really proud of that, to reduce the consumption, to look at, change habits, and to, drink our tap water is the best in the country. I don't know why more people are not drinking it, but we had fun events. We have fun activities like the look-alike pirate from Captain Jacob. And then, so we're probably going to do that. We're going to do it again, and we hope it's even bigger. And we hope more people join. And it's like going to be our annual thing now. So that's the kind of stuff we do. And again, the people who we reach are really diverse. It's really a diverse, rich background of people. It's not one sector or one kind of I think the beauty of it is really connecting people from all different backgrounds, and they walk away happy and that they learned something about the coastal environment. We also do community preparedness, as John said. I do take a personal, love of sort of sharing information when there's weather-related events. We have built up a good social media platform. So we do a lot of face-to-face interaction and engagement, but we also have a good social media platform that we invite other partners to use and members to use, and it is a network-building effort that could be really instrumental in a disaster or, it's a space. It's another space for community members and anyone really to use to reach people. And so we're always working on that. So this is actually with Boston EMS and Nancy's group with the Get Ready, Be Safe, Stay Healthy. We do joint trainings with some of the most vulnerable people in East Boston. And that's just priceless. When you have 30 people show up, right, Nancy? And they're all like pumping this dummy, right? And doing this rhythmic, and they're learning CPR. I mean, the guy in the blue, that's our former city councilor, Salamatina, and I was surprised he showed up. And I was happy he showed up, because I'm like, oh, okay, he served as city councilor for how long? I don't know, John's here for 15 years. But he felt like, okay, now I'm going to go and I'm going to learn CPR. I mean, this is really key. And you can see people are having fun, right? It's an intense topic, but it's fun. This is one of the many pictures we have of our shoreline cleanups. We're up to about 2,000 pounds of trash that we've collected this year, and that's great. I mean, that's amazing. And hundreds of volunteers we've recruited to actually join in these cleanups and take care of their environment and the waterfront. This is a picture of the area behind Shaw's that we're seeing. If you can see where the Shaw's truck is, you see some geese there swimming. That's supposed to be land. So that's not supposed to happen. So we're seeing an incredible amount of an increase in flooding and climate impacts. Shaw's is our only supermarket in East Boston. So if you lived in East Boston, you'd probably be concerned as well. So we're trying to work with the city, our city partners, state actors as well, trying to figure out what do we need to do? What else do we need to do to build the resilience until we get the funding and until these plans are in place? There's a lot of things that we can do, and we're doing. Sorry. So I think, was that enough? Okay. All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So Alex DeFronzo is the executive director of Piers Park Sailing Center. Alex, I find you to be soft-spoken and unassuming. But I also find you to be really passionate, incredibly passionate about helping people to enjoy the water, to get out on the water. And I think you're going to tell us a story about Piers Park Sailing and what you do. I want to ask everybody who's listening for a moment. I asked you before to listen for something, a place that you can connect, some way that you can participate in the kinds of things that we're talking about this evening. So I just want to encourage you to keep thinking about that. And really quick, has anybody had a new idea yet? A few? Okay, keep listening for that, and we'll talk about it in question and answer. Alex.
Thank you, John. Okay, hello. I'm Alex DeFronzo from Piers Park Sailing Center in East Boston, Massachusetts. I've been the director there for 2 years, but I've been a sailor there since I was 11 years old. The program opened up in 1998. It's located in Piers Park in East Boston, which is a beautiful waterfront park. If you've never been there, you certainly should go. The ICA crew that is here tonight, you probably experienced it. It's near the watershed, and it's the location where the ferry drops you off in East Boston. The facility was constructed by Massport as mitigation for the airport expanding. Before the park was built, there was really no public waterfront access, at least that was enjoyable to use in East Boston. And it became really like the crown jewel of open space for that neighborhood in Boston once it was built. And because of the advocacy of people in the community, included in that park was our sailing center. And what we're all about and how we relate to this is we think resilience is really about being able to adapt and change when you need to. And to do that in a way that's climate conscious, you have to be comfortable in and around the water. We know UMass Boston completed a study. They said the harbor wall is not going to work to block the rising sea from coming into our city. And just a couple weeks ago, the mayor released really an incredible plan at the Chamber of Commerce meeting for this year to build a system of waterfront parks that will act as a barrier between us and the ocean. It'll absorb water as it comes into our neighborhoods, and in some places act as a berm to block water. But one thing that we know, this is Jasmine, by the way, she's here, so if you have any questions after this is over, you can go talk to her about the Sailing Center. The mayor's presentation about the parks, it's going to produce so much new open space, and it's going to allow this important programming to exist in other parts of the city where it doesn't currently, and get more people familiar with and comfortable in and around the harbor. Since we invested billions of dollars to clean it up, it is one of the cleanest harbors in the United States. I swim in it. You should swim in it. It's a great place to enjoy. And it's important to make sure that people know how to exist safely with it, because even with a new system of parks and new green space all along the waterfront, there are going to be times where water comes into our neighborhoods. And it already is. Last winter, in January and March, we had 2 storms that flooded much of the East Boston waterfront. So each year we teach about 1,700 kids and about 400 adults how to sail. You can sail without burning any fossil fuels. We don't put motors on our boats. You just get on and go. Every week during the summer, all of the children in our program chart a course to one of the Boston Harbor Islands. They pack up the boat. They launch off the dock, sail to Lovell's or Peddocks or George's or Rainsford. They throw an anchor off the boat and they swim ashore to explore the island. It gives them a new open network of space that they can go and enjoy. And it helps them realize that the water connects us to each other rather than divides us from each other. So we try to make that really a key component of the mission of the Sailing Center. It's to take people that live in our local community, give them this resource that belongs to all of us, and make sure that they always have the opportunity to get out there and use it and feel comfortable with it. And we're really lucky and fortunate to have so many organizations in East Boston working together to get our youth, our families, our adults aware of what it means that the ocean level is rising, that flooding is going to happen more frequently, and to make it not a scary thing, but just another thing that we have to adapt to and be ready for. And that's really what our work is about at Piers Park. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. How does the mayor's plan work? Yeah.
If there's folks from the city that want to speak to it, I welcome them. The harbor wall was studied by UMass to build basically a giant gate at the mouth of the harbor that would connect all the way from Deer Island and Winthrop across to Hull, and that would have 2 points that open and stay open most of the time and then close in an event where there would be storm surge. And the study said basically it would be way too expensive and it wouldn't really in the long run protect us because eventually, really not that far in the future, it would have to close twice a day during high tide and the gates would eventually fail. So the mayor released a plan that said instead of building a giant gate to protect us from rising sea level, we should build a system of parks along the entire city waterfront that will act essentially as coastline, what we used to have. Now we have really just bulkheads along the entire harbor, concrete, and it will absorb water as water comes up and the sea level rises. And it will also provide a new public realm, new public spaces that we can all enjoy. You know, there's different places in the city where you can go and walk along the harbor walk, but there aren't a lot of places where you can actually interact with the harbor, and this will provide more opportunity for that.
Good question. Another question. With the money that you use to clean up the water, what exactly do you do? So I'm going to try and translate a little bit. So Boston Harbor's been cleaned up as compared to how it was back in, say, the 1970s and the 1980s. Could you guys speak a little bit about that cleanup and how our work today is related to it? And I don't know who wants to.
I could take it. So the cleanup of the Boston Harbor was an incredible feat. And it was done by it was actually created by a lawsuit. And they had to. The city of Boston had one of the dirtiest harbors in the country. And so they got sued, and so they had to clean it up. And so the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, they built a wastewater treatment plant that you might know about. It's at Deer Island. So the Deer Island wastewater treatment plant was a really state-of-the-art facility to this day. Actually, it's renowned all over the world. And what it does, instead of before this, the wastewater would be actually go right straight out into the harbor. So it was able to separate and filter this wastewater and clean it, chemically clean it, and then actually spew it out far into the ocean. So now our water is, as Alex was saying, it's really, really clean. I mean, this took a lawsuit. This took billions of dollars and building this amazing facility. What we're trying to sort of catch up with is the access to the water. So we have this beautiful harbor, but we really don't have the access that we'd like to have. There really should be a lot more activation of this amazing water body that we have that took billions of dollars in a lawsuit, and the need for this incredible facility that's there. By the way, you can visit the Deer Island wastewater treatment plant. One of our part of our work is actually organizing tours of the wastewater treatment plant. I know maybe somebody that's here might have gone, because it's about learning. It's like we have this amazing clean harbor, but a lot of people don't understand how it got to that point. So education on coastal issues and education on the harbor is really a big part of the work that we do. So thank you for that question.
Okay, I'll jump in for 1 second on it.
Go ahead.
The first time I ever went on a boat, I was in elementary school, and it was a field trip led by Bruce Berman, who at the time was running Save the Harbor, Save the Bay. And he told me a bunch of cool stories about all of the islands, and we caught a bunch of lobsters and flounders, and I learned all about them. But the most important thing I learned about was Deer Island and how us, as citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, paid to take a terrible, disgusting thing and make it a beautiful, really clean thing. And I appreciated that when I was a little kid, and I still appreciate it now. And it's one of the things that's really important to share as a story. The Boston Harbor cleanup, and I think burying the Central Artery and giving us the Rose Kennedy Greenway are two really things that we should be proud of. We make big investments, and we reaped big rewards from them. And there's a lot still that our state and our city need to make to continue, especially in transportation investments, I think. But we should really be happy and proud that we have this incredible resource, and we should all enjoy it as much as we can and make sure that we let everyone know and understand how important it is that we have it.
I want to take another question, and I want to echo that the decisions we're making today have long effects. And Kannan mentioned that, with the apple tree that's planted today, or that we're eating the fruit of. And I think the Boston Harbor cleanup is a decision that was made by many people, and it was a hard decision, and we are reaping benefits today. And similarly, we are making decisions today that will benefit both ourselves in the short term and others in the long term. Let's see. Latifa. So, good question. How can people that aren't East Boston residents learn more about what's happening in East Boston, and hopefully learn about similar things in your communities, or how to translate them so this kind of thing really is happening in all of our neighborhoods?
I'll plug in Zoomix. Zoomix is part of this coalition called CASTLE, Communities Advancing Science Literacy. Zoomix is a music organization. It's a youth organization. It also has a radio station. And
you can hear Kannan on Wednesdays on What's Up Eastie on the radio show.
Thank you, John. So What's Up Eastie is the name of the show, as John said. It is on Wednesdays at noon. And what we try to do on the show is to highlight all the good work that's going on, like what Magdalena's doing, Alex is doing. So that is one way you can learn about it, but you can actually also visit us. And come to Zoomix, come to Eastie Farm on Saturdays when we have our work days, weekly work days. And Harborkeepers has so many ongoing activities. If you check on the Harborkeepers Facebook site, you'll know. And the same goes for Piers Park as well, right? So And NOAA does a lot of good work as well, neighborhood of affordable housing and environment and community building. So we're all present on Facebook and Twitter, and we're also physically present in the neighborhood. And we like showing people around because we love the neighborhood, and we like talking about the work we do, as you can tell. So just come visit.
How can you find out more about the park system that the mayor has proposed? boston.gov/resilient-harbor.
He's got the URL.
Great question. What's been your experience working with city leaders and politicians, political leaders in your work?
Very good question. The way I think probably all of our organizations, we approach this is that the relationship building happens not just with the community, but all of the stakeholders. So that's also a very critical partnership and relationship that we have with our elected officials. Even if we don't agree with everything they're doing, that's okay. So our goal is really to engage them as well, join our activities, keep them informed, also support them, not in a way like, in terms of voting, but if they have a coffee hour, show up, right? And building a positive relationship with our elected officials. And guess what? In return, they support the work a lot. We just have right now in East Boston a great set of, and we definitely appreciate a lot of the work that was put in before from the predecessors. But, our city councilor, our state representative, our senators, they're all supportive of environmental issues. So that's a big plus for us. But the key is really the trust and the relationship building with sort of across the scale with multiple actors. Actors meaning, stakeholders. So from our organizational standpoint, we have a good relationship, or at least we think so, and we're going to try to continue to build that relationship so that they can support our work and so that we can grow our capacity and build more resilience.
I would say the relationship has been good. It is a good question, though, because there is a political system, there is money in politics, and there's a lot of entrenched systems that are in politics that makes things difficult. But I showed the picture of our state rep and our city councilor, and the state senator also came to be interviewed on the radio show. These people are very accessible. They're in the community. They go to the events. You can talk to them. If you have a problem, you can be open to them about that. That really helps. They take that, and what they can do back in their office may be a little bit limited, but that we're all fighting as a system, right? So, like I mentioned, money in politics is a big problem, and that is a problem worldwide. In national politics, we see that being played out as well. But what you can do is you can take community-scale actions. That's where I believe it's optimal, because you do see these people in power and you can talk to them. So we have great relationships. We make some strides, but we're also working on some challenges. Happy to talk in more detail. Good question.
Good question. From the perspective of someone who's lived and watched Boston grow, as we build park systems and accessibility and beauty around the city that also protects it, how will it remain affordable?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of housing displacement happening. Well, I don't know a lot, but there's a significant amount of housing displacement happening because of the changing landscape on the waterfront and because a lot of these large-scale projects have been approved prior to us existing as organizations. So that's a big challenge. As Kannan was saying, there are some challenges that we face. And so that adds actually some stressors to the community. So if you have housing displacement, now you're displacing whole families. It's becoming unaffordable to rent market rate apartments, and that changes a community. So you're right. What can we do as organizational leaders? I think that what we can do, because we can't change the fate of the development, I think, at least with the projects that have been approved, is try to encourage that they are built as climate resilient as possible. So continue to stay engaged with developers, with the city planning, the BPDA, and try to advocate at the policy level that the standards are pushed to the highest level, and also working directly with the community, to try to get them engaged on issues. Because I think a lot of this development was approved because the community just largely wasn't engaged on the issue, or maybe just wasn't aware really to what magnitude the development would happen. So if we are building resilience at the grassroots level with the community and getting making sure that people are engaged on these issues, then there's power in numbers, right? It's empowering in general. So I think we're doing whatever we can, but I don't know if we can. That's like the big nut to crack. I think is how do we stop displacement? I don't know if you guys
Our
can add.
waterfront for really since the early 1900s was mostly like brownfield sites, poisonous dirt, and a fence, and nothing else. So we'll take open space development over big, expensive glassy boxes for sure, but there is still development that's going to make it more expensive to live in East Boston. And I think the two things that weigh against that we should be advocating for is more density, especially around transit-oriented development, and more inclusionary housing.
So I've heard a whole bunch of themes tonight. I've heard themes about connections. I've heard themes about the importance of continuity and showing up and being consistent. I've heard themes about finding a little space with a big idea. And I've heard themes related to a term I've heard and read a little bit about, and I'll say is multi-solving, where you have a small space and a group of people and you turn waste into something valuable, and you save money at the same time, and you develop food that's good for the community, and you're solving multiple kinds of challenges all at the same time. And I hope that all of us will continue to ask for where are those small spaces that could have big ideas and small groups of people working together and building positive community relationships that really help us to be prepared and avoid the worst of challenges that may be coming at us, and really be prepared for the ones that are going to hit all of us at some point. I want to thank our speakers again very much, and again invite you to informally talk in the lobby after. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, John.